coming in can unmute themselves for the first 4 or 5 minutes to just say hi. Like I'd like to say hi to Joel and hear his voice say hi back.
Hey, Bonnie and everyone, how is it going? Good to see you all.
And it looks like we have a lot of new participants. So I'm happy to greet Joni and Nell or Nellie. I'm not sure how you pronounce your name. But if you unmute, you can tell me.
It's Nell.
Nell, great. Hi, Nell.
Hi,
Glad to have you.
glad to be here.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Bonnie.
Hi, you getting healthier by the day?
Oh, yeah.
With-
Thank you.
With mold clearing out?
Yes.
Great.
Thank
Well,
you.
that was humbling to hear. Hello to Maureen and Meredith and Eileen. Glad you're all here. Not sure how you've come to know of this, but you can chime in briefly. If any of you can just mention why you're here, what got you here?
I just happened to see a posting on probably Instagram for it, and I was really curious about this topic, so here I am.
Great.
This is Nell speaking. I've never been able to attend any of your programs because they're a little too far away for me. I'm in the city of Portland. So this is a nice opportunity for me to sit in on this.
Wonderful. Well, while we're waiting, I should also tell you and others that we are having a presenter showcase on March 24th. That's another Wednesday from 4 to 5:30. And those are what we usually do in person, with opportunities for networking, tasting local foods, and hearing from for-profit and nonprofit groups that tell their stories so that people can connect and find their ways in to the work of Slow Money Maine. So if you can make that event, we'll be sending something out about that as well. So Zoom conferences do have their benefits. A lot of new people. Hi, Marisa, Erin.
Hi, Bonnie.
Hi. Do we know each other?
I think we might have met through my work at Maine Family Planning. But
Okay.
I actually found out about this event through my student account. I'm a Muskie student at USM.
Great. Well, we're going to wait one more minute and then dive in, and people will come as they can. We had 62 people, I think, Carrie mentioned, registered, but we never know with Zoom events how many actually show up. But we're just going to begin and others can come in as they can. And we also understand from Zoom events that people come and go. So do that as you need to. Okay, I'm going to start. I'm Bonnie Rukin. I coordinate Slow Money Maine, which has been a network going since 2010 to connect food producers to funding and technical assistance. And we have developed a diverse and extensive network of individuals, foundations, state agencies, and so on to partner together to strengthen our local food system. So happy hints of spring to everyone. we don't know, along with the uncertainty of everything else, how long they will be with us, but we will savor them as they are. And welcome you all to this. We have tried to keep some of our style of gathering going during COVID, obviously resorting to virtual opportunities to make that possible, and still missing the opportunities that we've had in person, and looking forward to the time again that we will. And in doing this particular focus group, it also seemed that it's important going forward that our collaborations that have been a trademark of our work for 10 years are even more important going forward. MOFGA has been a strong ally through our work together in building a local food economy. So we invited MOFGA to co-host this event with us. And you'll be hearing from Sarah Alexander, the director of MOFGA, as soon as I finish my little intro. And I want to thank Carrie Lumen, my assistant, for pulling a lot of this together and bringing 3 producers and 3 of their customers together for 20-minute conversations that they will each have on the theme of what habits have changed, what patterns for both producers and consumers have changed during this pandemic, and what precipitated those changes, what may be the lasting impact of those changes, and what are the perspectives that people have come to understand through this time. Because it's really obviously important to us that a local food economy not only show itself for its strengths during a crisis, but that it be there for strong communities and thriving communities always. So we want to really work at identifying some of the pieces of that. And we thought it would be most helpful for you to hear directly from the producers and their customers. So we're going to have the 3 conversations. And if you have questions for the presenters during those conversations, please put your questions in the chat box, and they will go to Katie Green from MOFGA, who will be facilitating the conversations. We will have a Q&A time after all the conversations are finished, but we won't have them from participants during that time. If there are any tech issues, please get in touch with Carrie through the chat box. And I think that's all I have to say right now. I'd love to introduce Sarah Alexander to share a few of her thoughts about this topic.
Great. Well, thanks, Bonnie. We are very excited to be here and excited to continue our many collaborations with Slow Money and with so many of you. It's nice to see some familiar faces here today. And you all are probably familiar with MOFGA, but if anybody isn't, just briefly, we're the Maine Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association. We work to create a healthy and fair food system for all of us. And we do that through education, training, and advocacy, so that farmers can thrive, we can all have more local organic food, and we can build sustainable communities. And this conversation today, I'm particularly personally interested in, because it just happens to coincide with the 1-year unfortunate anniversary of when we all turned to this pandemic life that we're in now. And I think it's an important reflection point to really think about where were we a year ago. When I think about the work that MOFGA has done over the last year, so much of that work has been around how do we support farmers and producers in getting the resources that they need to, I think first and foremost, when the pandemic hit, just operate safely, be safe on farm, safely interact with customers. How can they continue their operations? And then thinking about markets and markets that shifted. How do we change course and make those pivots for folks that lost markets, and then for markets that increased, like the consumer demand and the direct to consumer pieces over the course of the last year. And how do we know what pivots we need to continue to support moving forward? So what was really successful? And then what are the questions around the consumer piece? So, you know, none of us have a crystal ball, but we know that more consumers than ever are interested in local food and supporting local producers. And that feels healthy and safe in many ways to folks. And once the restrictions that we're under right now are lifted, you know, our consumers going to continue to move forward. So we're just going to get a snapshot of some thoughts around that today. But, you know, as we think about how we plan a healthy, safe food system for everybody, I think there's a lot of lessons, both some silver linings that came out of the pandemic and lessons learned that we need to apply to our work moving forward. And one other effort I'll just mention briefly that MOFGA is doing is that we're undertaking another collaboration. We're in lots of circles with many of you and many other food and ag service providers. So we're undertaking another collaboration with Maine Farmland Trust, Cooperative Development Institute, and Coastal Enterprises to actually do some more formal surveying and research of consumers, of farmers, and of buyers at the wholesale level to try to answer those same questions. What changes are going to stick? What's worth supporting in the future? You know, where are consumers at? And so hopefully this summer we'll be able to jointly publish some of that information to share out with everybody in the broader community to help inform all of our work going forward. But I'm just really thankful for all of the work that you do, all of the collaborations we have, and excited for the conversation today.
Thanks so much, Sarah. All right, we're going to jump in. Our first pair of conversationalists will be Noah Wentworth from Frinklepod Farm in Arundel, and one of his customers, Mary Gickness. Take it away.
All right, well, very happy to be here. Like Bonnie said, I'm the farmer and co-owner at Frinklepod Farm in Arundel, Southern Maine. And we, just to give you a little bit of context for our farm, we are a 4-acre farm. We have a direct-to-consumer farm stand sale. So all of our sales are through our farm stand. We are open year-round. So we both produce on farm year-round as well as buy-in from other producers. Our farm stand has fresh produce. It has value-added products that we make in our commercial kitchen. And then we have, you know, some grocery items and other sort of interesting gift type things to fill out our farm stand. We do value our relationships with other farmers, so we definitely take the opportunity to produce to buy from other farmers as well. We have about 110 member debit style CSA. So the way that works is all of our members get a debit card that's loaded with the value that they buy in to on the season, and they can add value to that card throughout the year. We keep that membership, you know, at about 100 to 110 members because we are open to the public too. So we don't want to overextend ourselves. At the height of the season, we usually have about 4 employees and 3 apprentices. And we also do flour production as well. So the gist of this season for us was it was a very productive, busy season, and our farm did see a lot of growth, which was both welcome and stressful at times. But because we are a direct-to-consumer from the farm type of business, a lot of the issues that other farms may have been running up against in terms of farmers markets being closed or restaurants that they may have sold to, or other wholesale accounts that were either closed to them or struggling to maintain the same type of sales. We, had this established relationship with our consumers and the public. So it did give us the opportunity to really kind of lean into that and see, what ways we could help, our customer base, with the needs that they were experiencing in the different risk factors with grocery stores and stuff like that. We were really concerned, and our customers were concerned about, where their food was coming from. So we saw, I think there was basically 3 areas in our business that we really saw both the opportunities and growth. The first was, right after the pandemic started in March, we sort of saw this opportunity to use the distributors that we already had relationships with, as well as some of the other farms that we had relationships with, to basically purchase and repack boxes that we could distribute to our customers. And so we were using, Crown of Maine, as well as some of the distributors like Baldor, Associated Buyers, that would have normally gone to grocery stores, or actually more so restaurants, and their sales were way off. So they were happy to, see this other opportunity. So we took those distributors and other farmers and basically started packing produce boxes in, I think, late March. And we did that through April and May of last year. It was quite an experience for myself and my wife, Flora, given that at the time we didn't have any employees working last winter, and we spent a lot of late nights packing boxes, basically. But we were happy to do it. I mean, the profit margin on it was really slim. It wasn't like a big money maker for us, but it did give us revenue at a time of year that we normally wouldn't have. And I think we were packing probably somewhere in the vicinity of like 150 bags per week during that time. And then we have continued doing that this winter as well. And so then the other area was in seedling sales, and we had sort of by March we had sort of caught wind from both our seed suppliers that they were seeing kind of an uptick in sales to individual, backyard gardeners, and as well as just customers of ours that were contacting us making sure that we were going to have seedlings for sale and when they would be ready. So we kind of ramped up our seedling sales with that sort of knowledge in mind, or just anticipating that we might see more traffic in that late spring, early summer seedling sales. So that area of our business, which normally we would have done, probably like $15,000 in sales, I think we ended up doing somewhere around $35,000 in sales for seedlings. And it was remarkable. I mean, I think our opening day was right around Mother's Day in early May, and it was basically a snow, rainy, hail event with tons of wind. And we decided to open up anyways. And there was cars parked all along the road, and the line to sort of get in to purchase seedlings was about 50 people deep. So it was amazing to see, the interest and just people being obviously very concerned about where their food was going to come from, and thinking more critically about the opportunities they had in their own backyard. So our whole experience around our seedling sales was really interesting, enjoyable, lots of interesting conversations, short conversations behind masks, but that was great to see. And the third area was just the overall sales of our business. I think we had, about 100% growth this past year. And, somewhere around 40 to almost 50% new customers. So a lot of new people, and obviously tourism, which in our area, we're near Kennebunkport, it usually represents a pretty big part of our business at the height of the season. And that was, of course, way off in terms of total numbers. So that increase in sales and customers visiting, new customers being up as much as it was, just local people kind of making different choices in where they went. So I could get into a little bit more detail about each of those areas, but I did want to just introduce Mary, and who's been a longtime customer. She has, we had at different times had a Harvest for Hunger plot on our property that produced for food banks, and Mary was always a great participant in all of that. And so she has been both around the farm as a farmer, working the land with us, and also a customer of ours for a long time. So interested in your perspective, Mary, about both your experience with us and also your personal choices.
Well, thanks, Noah. When the pandemic started, I was very concerned about where my food came from, and I really didn't want to go to the grocery store. So the fact that you guys were providing the CSA bags was great. It was like, okay, problem solved. I just have to go over there and get a bag. That's good. I felt it was safe. Not too many people handling it. Now I'm finding out it was just you and Flora. Really safe. But it was fresh and it was ready, and I knew it was high quality food. And I was very grateful to be able to go there. And I was in line for your seedling sale, your next point. I was there on that cold, windy, snowy, horrible day in May. But again, I think like everyone else, I've always had a garden. And I wanted, my plants for my garden. I think the pandemic taught people that it's good to know how to do things. I farmed with you and the crew, the Harvest for Hunger crew, but I grew up on a farm too. So it was, even my kids said, Mom, you've got mad skills. Like, where do you, how do you know this stuff? And it was just, it was a good time to know how to do things and to grow my own food. And I continue to be a CSA member. And in fact, my husband, who you might have seen walking through, was just going over to the farm to pick up my bag at Frinklepod right now. I think that the pandemic, well, I don't want to be locked down ever again. I think it did teach people not only that they can grow some of their own food, I think it changed how much they valued food. And this is something that I grew up on a farm, but it was a cow farm. So we weren't too worried. I wasn't out there weeding things, and it's different than growing vegetables. And I think what I learned with doing Harvest for Hunger and hanging around your farm is how much work goes into producing produce. It's a lot of work. And when you work that hard to produce something, you don't waste it. You realize its true value. So I think anybody in the last year who grew their own stuff realizes it's not overpriced. When you go to the store and you buy something, no, it's not overpriced. Just don't buy it and throw it away. Don't waste it. Buy it and eat it. I think it taught people a lot about the value of food and how much we need to really support customers. I think there was a lot more local support, and you seem to say that too with, our tourists weren't here, but you had the increase in customers. I think people wanted food that they knew where it came from, and they knew that it was high quality. And also, even though we have a big tourist industry here in Kennebunkport area, there's also a sense of community. And I think people wanted to support each other. I think people wanted to support you. I think people like Noah and Flora, and they want to support Noah and Flora, not only Frinklepod Farm, not only to get their good broccoli and their good tomatoes, but they want to support you personally and your family, because it's really nice having a farm down the road. It's really, really nice. So I don't know. That's what I have to say. Oh, I see a question. Was I already growing my produce? I've always grown some things. Yes. And I have a friend who grows a lot more than I do. And I usually end up over in her garden doing some chores for food.
Mary, I just want to say I loved what you said about recognizing the true value.
It's so true. I mean, the first summer I worked in the Harvest for Hunger garden at Frinklepod. It was hot, it was sweaty. And, I'm thinking, damn, this like scrawny tomato, and where it was hot, it was really hard work. It wasn't like, going out with my little pretty hat on and my little snippers and, oh, how cute, let me tie my tomato. No, this was hard. And I learned a ton. And from Noah was always helping us, and our leader was very knowledgeable. And, we all worked together, but it was really a bunch of old ladies doing this. And I'm damn proud of that, that we grew 10,000 pounds of produce and in 5 years. We're really very, very proud of that. But it really does teach you, like, hey, it's got a spot in it. It doesn't mean you don't eat it. Just cut that spot out. It's fine. I think it does make people appreciate what, the value of produce and what you're getting and how hard it is once you know how hard it is to grow.
Yeah, I think we had a lot of conversations with our customers about, when they were going into the supermarket and sort of seeing the scarcity initially in the pandemic, and the sort of notion that, wow, like our food system, our food chain is actually not as secure as we think it is. It kind of brought up this sense of insecurity in people, and then, turning to, a local producer and coming into the stand and seeing, a lot of produce there being grown, right around the farm stand, I think helped people get this connection that, growing something locally and even in your backyard, it just gave people a sense of security that the whole experience of the pandemic was really disrupting in our lives. And I think for that reason, I'm really hopeful that people's, memory of this experience, continues to hold true in terms of the value that may have been sparked in just being able to count on, a local farm and what they're producing. And there's a more direct exchange of money and product that I think a lot of our customers just felt really a lot more secure in. It was a difficult time for us. Obviously, there was a lot of concern about our employees' health, and luckily we made it through this past year with everyone being safe and healthy. But I also felt good about the way the safety measures that we put in place, and the ways in which our customers and our employees were able to still interact and feel safe around each other, and sort of maintain some sense of normalcy and really cherishing that type of more personal contact in our purchasing experience. So,
with regard to what you said about the food chain or in food security, I think the other thing that happened in this past pandemic was I've always canned. That's just something I do and preserve food. But I had people asking me, hey, can you show me? I've got my garden made a lot of tomatoes. Can you show me what to do? Like, how can I save that? So I think people were really more in tune to like where your food comes from and, what you can do with it and how you can enjoy it through the years. I think people became a little bit more appreciative of food and maybe a little bit, took a little bit more pride in what they grew or what they could purchase in the skills that they acquired in preserving it. It makes you feel good when you can feed your family through the winter because you were smart in the fall.
Yeah, and that was usually we would be able to offer workshops around cooking and canning and stuff on the farm. And that was something that we really missed this season. We were able to have, families come to the farm with sort of in pods of kids and parents that were already around each other. But we were able to get them onto the farm and do some harvesting and making smoothies and stuff like that. So we were able to, have a few different other offerings in terms of experience, but we really did miss all of the hands-on workshops and stuff that we would normally have done.
But people always came to you to ask questions. I mean, I would hear it. I'd be walking on the beach and saying, yeah, I've got to go to Frinklepod and see Noah because I don't know what to do about, I've got this bug. I put it in a jar. I'm going to take it over to Noah and ask Noah what it is. And so you were available. You were always available.
That's right. I mean, that's always been an interesting aspect of our operation, just because we are, on a busy road, and our farm is relatively compact and small. And so we've always recognized that we're going to have to make time for interruptions and having longer conversations with people and answering questions. But that's just sort of become part of the characteristics of our farm and our operation. So,
and I think it gives you it breeds customer loyalty. I don't think that, I know that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
That was a great conversation. Thank you both, but we are at time. So I'm going to turn it over to Bonnie, and we will have time at the end for Q&A. We do have some questions coming in. Bonnie, you're still muted if you're talking.
Sorry. Thank you both for starting us off. And we're going to move to the world of butchering with Ben Slayton from Farmers Gate and his customer, Nico Chin. Hello.
Thanks, Bonnie. Hi, Nico.
Hey, Ben.
Thanks for being here. Hi, everybody.
Hey.
My name's Ben Slayton, and I own a business called Farmers Gate Market. We're in Wales. And we have a sister store in South Portland called Solo Cucina Market. We're a whole animal butcher. We've been in business for about 11 years, and I started as a farmer, small scale livestock. Quickly learned the limitations to processing and distribution and marketing of meat in Maine, where a lot of opportunities existed 10, 15 years ago for vegetable producers through farmers markets and CSAs and such. Those opportunities really weren't out there for small scale meat producers. So we switched gears pretty quickly in the beginning to just focusing on aggregating, processing and distributing local, sustainably raised, grass-fed beef, pasture-raised pork, organic chicken. And for, all 10 of those years have been promoting the importance of small-scale local agriculture that's focused on the community and supporting the local farms. And we talked a lot about the robustness and the importance of the small-scale food system and its resilience, but we didn't really get tested until this past year. And so it just goes to show that I think what we learned anyway in the first few months anyway of the pandemic, that all that talk was real, like especially in the meat world where slaughterhouses and processing plants were shutting down. We saw a lot of new customers because they just flat couldn't get meat anywhere else. And so I felt vindicated in some way. I think we all should, that we've been doing this work to promote and grow a food system here in Maine that can handle whatever it is that comes at us. It's just a little bit more resilient. And we saw it flat out where the meat was not in the grocery store, but in our local system, the farmers that we work with were still, their animals were still healthy and going off to the local slaughterhouse. And luckily the slaughterhouse that we partner with was able to stay healthy and continue week in and week out to get animals through and off to our shop where we could cut and pack and add value and sell. And so it was I think that's like the big happy takeaway, is that it is working. And those 10 years on our end, and many more years for other farms out there who have been doing the work, we stood up to the test, and I think we should all be proud. I'm kind of curious to see how like Nico's perspective is. As a customer, Nico has been with us long before the pandemic. I picked her to join us today because we noticed Nico was a more regular customer. In fact, about as regular as it comes. Friday morning, 9 o'clock, Nico was there, and it was really like clockwork for us. We just knew that she was going to put in the order, and we were going to deliver it to her when she showed up. Usually she was on a meeting. She's busy. But it kind of emerged for us. And then we had other customers who followed a similar pattern. And I kind of liken the retail world to playing poker. You just don't know, and I don't play a lot of poker, but you don't know what you're going to get, right? You're going to get a hand, and you got to play that hand. And it's kind of, luck, right? There's some skill, but mostly luck. And we don't need to get a royal flush every day, but it would be nice to have a full house, is what I've always said. And what we started to see through the pandemic, the first few months, was we were busier. We were had regular customers, and it made our business a lot easier because we would do the work, and we knew that it was going to sell. Whereas the 10 years prior to the pandemic, some days we'd get the 4 aces, and the other days we'd get nothing. And with highly perishable goods, it's like the retail world is a scary place, which is why I don't play a lot of poker. But all of a sudden, we were getting the regularity, the orders were coming in on a weekly basis, and we just had much more control over our business. And so for this past year, in addition to just trying to address the in our face, like there's an increased demand and we want to make sure we don't fall flat on our face, we've also been thinking about how do we continue to grow this kind of business that's a little bit more predictable, and what kinds of things can we do to ensure that when the pandemic does subside a little bit, we still have the customers coming. So when Bonnie called to see if I wanted to do this, I was all in, because this is what we need to figure out. And it's been interesting here the first couple months of 2021. We're starting to see, what life is like. Not that we're post-pandemic yet, but it is like the demand has tapered off a little bit. We're still overall doing better than previous years, but some of those customers who found us when the grocery stores were not available to them have gone away. And so, this would probably be a good time for me to just pass it over so that Nico can explain like her perspective. I'd love to know where we failed. It's always the best way to learn. But maybe we could talk about some of the good things we did too. So take it away, Nico.
Yeah, Ben, so I live about 15 minutes away from Farmers Gate over in Leeds. And it was always my special treat. So I grew up in a big city, about 5 doors down from a butcher and a bakery. And I just grew up where you go to your butcher, you go to your baker, you go to your deli. Like that was, it was kind of, I was in middle school when we started going to like the Hannafords or the Shaws, instead, as those small places and more local places closed down in my neighborhood. And so I felt a lot of heart connection to Farmers Gate. And in the middle of running my own business and having 2 kids who are now 3 and 5, I was like, oh, that's a treat. That's a treat if I can drive 15 minutes to Farmers Gate to get it, right? And I just didn't quite have the logistics in my head of how to like make it work. And I also wasn't sure budget wise, like I hadn't done the math on it, right? But it was like, oh, this is a treat, both from budget and from the logistics. And I think really early on in the pandemic, a lot of what Mary was saying really resonated with me. My husband and I sat down and we were like, what are our priorities? And healthy local meat that was from animals that have been loved and taken care of really fat into our world of how we were going to be caring for each other in this time. And so I started, I think the game changer was really when Farmers Gate said, you can email us your orders. That was like, literally, I still get a big smile when I think about that, because I can't remember how I figured it out, but I was like, let me just see what Farmers Gate is doing. And then I was like, oh, I can email. This is wonderful. And so I would just email Ben like every Tuesday. And yeah, like on Fridays, I would like go and when we were doing you couldn't go in the store, I would kind of multitask. So I'd be on the phone and I'd get my meat and then I'd keep going. And this shift really happened when the store opened back up, because I was like, oh, I can go in and I can pick. And for a minute, I was still like emailing and then picking it up and going in and walking in. And then I was like, I kind of like being in a store again. And it kind of brought me back to what I had lost through gentrification and corporatization of our food systems. And I started like changing my whole Friday routine. And so now, Ben, you and I miss each other on Friday mornings, but like, I don't do my calls anymore. I come, and I've actually redesigned my entire Friday morning around when Farmers Gate opens. So I like take out the trash, drive out to Turner to get some groceries I can't get anywhere else, stop at Nizinskit's farm to get some of their produce and get a breakfast sandwich, give a breakfast sandwich to my friend who has a local farm, and then keep driving over to Farmers Gate. I get there right when they open. And I look forward to talking about the recipes we're cooking. And me and some of Ben's staff really like Dave Chang. So we talk a lot about how we're using his salts and, what are we trying? And something I've always said to my husband is, Ben's staff is better than Google. Like if I pick up a piece of meat and I ask them to just explain to me how to cook it, this has always been true. They will tell me in a very simple way, and it has never failed me. And what Friday mornings have really become for me, and I'm watching a lot of kids TV, it like feels like my own version of Sesame Street. Like I'm relating to human beings. Like we have to wear masks, but I feel like a sense of community. And, Ben, as I was hearing you talk, it's like, I feel like you're like this extended part of our pod of like, and, we had to go on deep lockdown because we have an immunocompromised family member, and we still are. We haven't really reintegrated into things. And so that connection that I get on those Friday mornings sometimes is the only connection, especially when the weather was bad and we weren't walking outside, was really like the only in-person connection I would get some weeks when the weather was particularly bad. So that's kind of just to tell you the story of, I feel like it's just been wins for me. And the budget stuff all works out, and it's like, once this is a priority.
I was curious about that. Like,
sorry, I talked a lot, Ben.
That's great. But I was, when you touched on the budget, because that's obviously a touch point for us in our business. The perception is, oh, I like, grass-fed beef and locally raised, organic, pasture-raised meats. I like that, but I don't think I can afford it. The cost of food is going up. And when I look at some of the prices in grocery stores, like in some cases, our ground beef is actually cheaper. And some of our other cuts, now chicken is usually the big culprit because, factory farm chicken is just not good, but it is cheap. But on the pork and the beef, like I think our prices are actually pretty competitive. But I was curious when you mentioned that, like if you've noticed that yourself, or.
I think there's two things. Like it is more expensive, but it's been a priority for us for probably 3 reasons, right? Like one is the nutrients that we're getting from the meat that we buy with you is better than the nutrients from factory farmed meat. Like it's just a better product to be putting into our bodies and into our family. I think the second thing is like, especially those first few weeks, I was like, Ben, my husband's name is Ben, it really tastes better. Like, and so if I'm going to spend all of this time cooking at home, I want the flavors to come through. And I think the third piece is when I was driving my daughter home before we started this chat, and I was like, oh, Anju, I'm going to be on this call with Farmers Gate and our butcher. And she was like, that's why I had to skip it. And she said, please tell everyone that I love the bacon. And that's like, it's just like that connection that we have when we have either your bacon or your sausage or your country ham every Saturday morning. It's like a part of our ritual of grounding. And so there is something different that we're getting for the value. And I think that's what made it be, for me, there's no going back, you know, at this point, because it's just like, I love those Friday mornings and I want to keep doing it.
Well, I appreciate hearing that. And this is being recorded, so I'm going to play it against you if I have to.
You can.
That's great to hear. And I do appreciate it. It's an interesting, point you make about the nutrient quality and the value, and that was brought up with Mary and Noah as well. People, I think, through this past year maybe took a little extra moment to think about like how important food is. In some cases, it sounds like Mary got her hands dirty and appreciated the labor and the cost of what goes into it, which helps explain a little bit more about why it costs a little bit more. I also think, one thought that I've been pushing this year, especially in the face of a growing interest in plant-based meats, which I have some thoughts on, and that's not what we're here to talk about today, but the message we're really trying to push out there is that perhaps as a society, we should eat a little less meat, because it does have an impact on the environment, especially the factory farms. I'll maintain that our grass-fed beef producers are doing more good to the environment and the natural resources in the land and the nutrients in the soil than harm. But we would all probably do better to eat a little less meat, but spend a little bit more money on better quality. And then in doing that, I think those other comments you made about enjoying the process of cooking and the taste all come with it.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to say, Ben, excuse me, I don't want to cut you off.
No, that's a good time.
The other thing I wanted to say about what my experience of Farmers Gate is I've actually seen you as a hub of a bunch of local producers. Like, you have the Amish market that opened in the middle of COVID. And so I could stop there and get like locally made fudge or some produce. And I just found Maine mushrooms.
Oh yeah.
For you. And I made a delicious sauce this morning.
Yeah.
And there's this, it's almost a weekly thing where it's like when I crack the eggs that I get from you and I look at the yolk and I'm just like, oh, that's a great yolk. And the quail eggs that we've introduced our kids to. So I see it both as she loves the cheese. So it's also it's both the ecosystem of the cows and the grass, and it's the ecosystem of all of the producers that come through Farmers Gate too, for me.
Yeah, well, I appreciate hearing that. What else do we want to talk about?
I don't know if there's any questions, but we're probably almost at time.
Right? Someone want to chime in here? Get us.
Yeah. We are close to time,
okay.
But I did have one question come directly to me, which is primarily for you, Ben, which you kind of touched on things still changing in terms of return customers. But things just like can't change that quickly in meat production. So how are you working with your suppliers this year? How has that relationship changed? And we have 4 minutes.
4 minutes, that's fine. It's a big topic. So this really started, we got hit in March. And in fact, our customers told me that this pandemic is a real thing, because somewhere around the first week of March, we started to double the daily revenue. And it happened once. And like I was saying before, sometimes you get dealt the royal flush. And I was like, oh, we had a good day today. Wow. Then it happened the next day and the next day, 4 days in a row. And that was when I was like, ooh, this pandemic is like, people are paying attention. This is something that we need to, start to figure out how we're going to address. And so really that was the rest of March and into April. And it was about mid-April when I started, a lot of our producers, we work with about 20 local farms. Some of them and some other farms that, we don't work with, I noticed we're working hard to try to make sales happen, you know, because people were willing to drive down the farm lane and right up to the farm and buy goods off of the farm, which is a great thing. And it's, you know, our whole reason for being is to create a market for the farms. We want to try to support the local farms, but it dawned on us that it doesn't make sense for every farm to build up a little store, because I know from experience, it's hard to keep a store going year round. And there's costs associated that if you don't get the throughput or the volume, it's just not going to work out. So we started talking to producers back in April and May about, you know, what kinds of things can we be doing to when we come out of this, because we will at some point, and maybe next year, which is now this year or beyond, what can we be doing to help establish like more infrastructure and distribution to make sure that we don't let those customers get away? Because if we don't make ourselves more convenient, then the customers are going to go back to the grocery store. And I've already seen that happen a little bit. So I'm currently working with two of our primary farms on bringing them into the ownership of Farmers Gate, and looking for ways to build more capacity for processing. And so we're working with some people, you know, around the state who are good at supporting farmers and people like me, CEI and other networks. So that's currently happening. Nothing has happened yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if within the year we're ready to talk about like a growth that we've made. And that's always going to be known for me as like, we took that COVID inertia and turned it into something that lasts. That's our goal. I don't want to over promise yet, so nothing to really to report, but the conversations are happening, the financial models are being created, and hopefully in 6 months or so from now, there's something more concrete. But is that all 4 minutes?
That sounds great. Thank you. So back to Bonnie.
Thank you both so much. That was a wonderful perspective to offer. We're going to finish with Adrienne Lee from Daybreak Growers Alliance, who is also a farmer, and her customer, Jennifer Giuliano. Thank you both for being here.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having us. I think this is a great discussion to have, and one that definitely is on my mind and on folks at Daybreak, and as an individual farmer on my mind all the time, kind of curious where things are headed post, I guess I would say there's no necessarily post-pandemic, but as things shift right now. And I guess just wanted to quickly talk a little bit about who we are and what we do, but Daybreak Growers Alliance, we basically are a farmer led local food distribution business that is working with right now about 50 farms in like the Waldo County, Kennebec County area. And we sell like multi-farm CSA boxes and do some wholesale, but we really, where we came about this whole, how we started really was from a need to try to help move and distribute more food, I would say, to population centers around Maine from our local food producers up here, and also just really trying to figure out a way to do that while still having the farmer's voice really carry through into the boxes and into to the customer. So we work with we work with vegetable producers, meat producers, lots of cheese and dairy, and just value added items that local folks produce. And this is our 2020 was like our third season. We did like a pilot year where it was quite small, and then 2019 was really our kickstart of where we really kind of started building this model. And we saw we distribute food from the mid coast down to Portland. We've have a pretty strong customer base in the areas that we're working, and a lot of support. We've really seen a growth this past year, which really this kind of gets to Ben's point about the voice of like what we were hearing from a lot of our farms was that farms really wanted to keep that connection and stay as close as they could to the end buyer of the food, but doing it alone takes a lot of work. And I myself had my own CSA for our farm for 8 years before getting Daybreak Growers Alliance going with some other farms. And all the organization and logistics was keeping me out of the field, was really not really that part of our business, even though I really loved connecting with the customers. It was taking a lot of time when we were very busy as far as just like organizing and managing. So having a multi-farm model really was appealing to us and similarly appealing to other farms. But what we found with it is that to make this business work, it's kind of, you have to have a critical mass. You definitely need to have a certain amount of customers to kind of handle and manage the logistics and infrastructure that takes to kind of have a joint effort. And what happened to us this year is we went from in 2019 getting our really kind of figuring out what our needs were, but still struggling to kind of, I would say, launch what like a sustainable place for us as a business, to really getting to a level of sales and a level of support from customers and also support from our farms, where it's really feeling like a positive, we now feel like we have some like staying power, and it's been really great to have the relationships that we've built with our customers and also supported farms. Like I think a big goal for us is just really trying to support local eaters and producers. And this year we went from 2019 to 2020. We had almost 300% growth in sales. We went and we sold about $900,000 in produce this year. And so that feels great as far as like how many farms we were able to help support, where a lot of the farms that we worked with, you know, some of them were reliant on traditional, you know, whether it was sales to farmers markets that maybe initially went down, or restaurants, or even initially early in the pandemic, even myself as my individual farm, I saw even my sales to like co-ops and stuff was diminished because people are kind of just changing their buying habits a lot. And so having Daybreak be able to support the local farms in this kind of more volatile time felt really good. It was kind of mayhem initially. We went from like 3 employees to 10 employees and had to double our cooler space, while trying to figure out how to safely socially distance for our crew and trying to maintain sanitation for making sure we really valued like making sure our customers felt safe. And so, you know, having a lot more protocols related to that, and expectations for like our producers and how we received produce. I think as far as just to kind of talk about some of the highlights, you know, I think the one thing we really saw beyond just like an overall increase was we could really tell that even our individual customer base was increasing kind of the amount of food dollars that they were buying from us. And I don't know if that really meant that they were just flat out increasing the amount of local food dollars that they were spending, or if it was that they couldn't get things from certain other ways that they were normally getting local food. Especially I would say, like Ben was mentioning with meat, like we saw like at least a 100% increase in, there was a huge increase in meat, especially early on in meat sales, which I have been happy to say, like there was a spike in that March, April period, but we now, I would say, have leveled off to still, I would say still double what we were selling before. And that's been kind of steady. So I'm hoping that that is kind of a continuation, like that we'll see that continue on. I do think that you know, I think we've been in this long enough that people have had to change their buying habits and the way that they're getting food. And hopefully they're in some new systems of like, you know, how they go about their week, and like they figured out a new way to do something amidst COVID, and hopefully that kind of stays, and they want to kind of keep with that because they've seen the value in that. We, you know, as far as other things that changed, we had to increase the amount of days that we're doing deliveries, and just all in all, we're actually just finally, I think this winter's been busy just kind of assessing where we're at after like really rising to try to meet this demand this year. And now we've had a winter of we're a year-round CSA business, but we deliver bi-weekly in the wintertime. So things are a little bit more manageable. And so we've been able to kind of have some time to reassess and think smarter about how to improve things for next year. And I'm really excited that Jennifer's here today to talk a little bit from her perspective as a customer of ours that started right before really the pandemic hit. But really, I'm curious about what this coming season is going to be. Curious about how people have maybe hopefully changed their buying habits for good, or like, I'd love to hear a little bit about, Jennifer, from you about like what brought you to try Daybreak, and then also what's kind of making you stick with it. That's a big part of it. What makes you feel like you want to keep making this a part of your week, and also like what things are really great, like what things are working well for you, and what things you would love to see like us improve on to make it work better for you. I think it'd be great to hear from your perspective.
Sure, thank you. So I started with Daybreak Growers Alliance right before the pandemic, partially because my husband was paying attention to what was going on in the rest of the world. And so we were like, you know what, let's start to like think of maybe more resilient ways to do the things that we do every week. And we had been members of a CSA years ago, a different one kind of up near Skowhegan, Maine. And we often, even in our local grocery store, will choose like the non-chain store and the brands like Maine Grains or those kind of brands that we're familiar with, and we kind of know where they're coming from, and we know a little bit of the story behind them, and we feel good about feeding them to our family. And then I'm sticking with it for a lot of reasons. So we've had a really positive experience, and when I think about how we've changed our habits, I have 3 young children, and I'm an educator, and my husband and I both work full time. We have like very little free time. I grew up doing 4-H and basically on like a hobby farm in a rural area outside of Maine. So we really value food, and we love food, and we're foodies. And I echo a lot of the sentiments that the other customers have mentioned about like nutrients and value and all of that, and the relationships. And I can see where it's worth it to put your dollars, where your mouth is, basically. But it has saved me a lot of time, honestly, to buy most of our food through the Daybreak Growers Alliance. We have chickens of our own, so we produce our own eggs. And we also do have a pretty substantial home garden with like raised beds and all of that. And Mary had mentioned, like I have for years have already been baking sourdough before it was cool, and making kimchi and fermented veggies and things like that. But it saves me so much time to instead buy really, really top-notch, like delicious, what feels like luxurious foods, instead of me trying to do like sort of a mediocre job at all of those different things. Additionally, I haven't been to a grocery store in a very long time. My husband will go to the grocery store occasionally, but we've really pared down and changed the way we eat. So we eat a lot of yogurt, and then all of a sudden Daybreak Growers Alliance was offering yogurt from like a place in, I think, Monmouth. Mm-hmm. And we love bagels. I'm a New Yorker, like from a long time ago, and all of a sudden we could get bagels. So I think some of those things, we don't we don't go in the grocery store that often anymore, so we don't see the things, so we don't miss them anymore. And instead, we're eating the things that we get, basically. There are still some times when I have to bite something to know what it is, like a rutabagas, turnips, and radishes really sometimes puzzle me. But we
You
realize
get to
that,
know those a little bit more in the winter.
yeah.
So you get
And
to know those a little bit more in the winter.
yes, exactly. And in the winter, we eat what we can eat in the winter. And I think it's okay to, like, I don't miss kiwis. You know what I mean? I don't miss some of the things by choosing to eat what is abundant here now. We do still get we try to like get some food that's kind of like gleaned essentially that would have been thrown out regularly. So we do get a box from a place called Misfits Market, which takes produce that is kind of redirected away from grocery stores that they wouldn't have been able to sell. So that's how we get like lemons and things like that we kind of still feel like we need. We definitely eat more vegetables and more plants and more fruit since the pandemic started and we became CSA members. We do also get the meat box through Daybreak Growers Alliance, but talking about price, we shop around too within the local market. So I live in Pownell, Maine, which is down near Freeport, like where Bradbury Mountain State Park is. That's Pownell. And we will go to Old Crow Ranch or other local meat producers nearby.
I grew up in Durham.
Oh, yeah. And so we'll say, you know what, actually, like they have a better price on whatever it is. Or, oh, the beef that we can get through Daybreak Growers Alliance, they have a better price on this cut. Or we just eat different cuts that are more affordable for us at this time. I guess other habits is that during the pandemic, when the days all sort of started to blend together, it really felt like a highlight of our week to have to be able to customize our share. And my husband and I would have be like, oh, it's like a mini date. We can sit on the couch and customize our share. And my children are a big part of it. Like we cook a lot and we make a lot of our own food from scratch beforehand, but that's become something that's more important to us, is that our kids can process food and chop food and peel garlic and knead bread and things like that. And it's cool for them to know that, hey, right now everything on our plate, like this is a chicken and egg from our chicken, and this is like pea sprout pesto from the box, and this is like a king mushroom from whatever. So that's been a really big shift for us as well. I guess another way that I justify any of the differences in price is that they're really, yes, it might be a small, yes, it's more expensive upfront, but I feel like I try to think about all of the repercussions of my buying habits if I were to buy things more conventionally that are coming from far away and are more processed or are produced at a scale that's less sustainable in the long term. And all of those costs that will then be pushed onto me later in life, as well as my children. And so those are just much larger costs. But also, I also want to admit that like there's privilege involved, right? So I'm privileged in that like I can afford that upfront increased price to get more local and organic foods. Somebody had asked a question about organic foods, and I think that for me at least, I'm under the impression that there are a lot of smaller farms that can't afford to go through the like organic certification process sometimes, but that they're still producing really good, valuable, quality, nutritious products, and they're still treating the environment in a respectful way. So for me, I don't always prioritize organic. I'm more likely to go for local. And by local, I really mean the state of Maine. than I am to go for organic. There are certain things sometimes when organic is a little bit more important to me. I feel like I have a lot to say, but I don't want to talk too much. So I think some of the feedback would maybe be, it was really clear to tell when Daybreak Alliance was like making shifts in terms of, oh, people want polenta, or people are looking for rye flour, and you would see those come up as being available. Or I feel like maybe there's an abundance of ground chicken out there. Or like even just the boxes that you can choose, and with like Southpaw Farms and some of those more value added products like processing salsas and hot sauces and fermented foods and the miso. It is really cool there's so much that you can get. And I don't miss I don't miss a lot of the things that I don't see anymore. Yeah.
Do you feel like there's, so you say you don't really miss much. Do you feel like there's, one question, I mean, you brought up fruit, which is obviously, that's always a little bit of a struggle sometimes. We're never going to have lemons, for example. But I do see how like you can really change your habits. And as far as like, one thing that we definitely noticed, and was really interesting to hear you talking about the customization of your shares, is I do feel like that has been a huge, when we first started Daybreak, you couldn't do that. It was much more of a static box that people were getting. And I have really seen how the amount of people that, because you can choose to either just like have your box, however the kind of algorithm creates it based on your preferences with Harvey that we work with, or you can manipulate it and customize your share box. And we've definitely seen an increase in the amount of people that are doing that over the course of this year. And it's really nice to hear like how that is kind of part of your week and how that is really valuable to you as far as like helping you kind of choose what you want throughout the week. And, I think that for us, I kind of am curious, how do you see, like now that you feel like your habits have changed, how do you see that change? Do you think things will stay the same or change in the future as we kind of open up as a state, as a country? Do you have, I mean, it's so hard to know really.
Yeah. I mean, throughout the course of the past year, whenever I would tell someone about, well, in the beginning, it was like, how are you getting food? And everyone was kind of just trying to share strategies that they had found to access different foods so that they could feel safer, and safer in terms of how they procured that food, and also just like safer with the food itself and who had handled it or how it was packaged, things like that. And then it became, in the spring and summer, if people weren't great at gardening and they still wanted to sort of can things or preserve things, and just that unknowing and that instability, I would tell people about Daybreak Growers Alliance or Misfit Market, or sometimes the farmers markets, like in the winter when the weather changes, they kind of shut down or they move inside, and that really makes some people not feel comfortable. And I probably 7 or 8 of my friends in this area, but also like in my family up in Skowhegan have joined, and they're all still doing it. So even though they can go to grocery stores, and some of these people are even now vaccinated, they're still getting the CSA. And that's because you can't get some of these foods in Hannaford. I don't have the time to go to the farmer's market necessarily and go booth by booth every week to get the volume of food that I need. Also, I think it's just like little small things, like the transactional difference of I can pay for my food online and know that it's coming and use a credit card, versus like at the farmer's market, that's not always the case. You go get cash, and it's just like one more small hurdle or layer. I also think that for some places like Pownell, actually, like we don't have any stores in Pownell, and we only have a few farms. And so it's like kind of a food desert. I would have to drive, about 20 minutes to get to some farms, but to go to all of the farms that I'm able to, that are within my reach now because of the CSA program is huge. I guess some things I still do find myself trying to procure in other ways are seafood. Seafood is something that is a little bit trickier. Like we would have to go to like a fish market or find like a direct, and I think it was Ben that was talking about, going to every single farm. It's hard on the farmers, I think, but it's also a little bit, it's tedious sometimes for the customer too. Although that's where you get the relationship piece. Like that's when you know the person and meeting you and seeing your face and knowing that there's like these families behind them, which I already knew that, but it just makes it that much stronger, the connection and the commitment that I have to staying a customer. I do wonder, and I had talked to you about this, like I do wonder for some people, my neighbor, for example, who knows about the CSA and really values a lot of the same things that I do, but hasn't signed up. And I kind of wonder, like, what's holding them back from choosing pretty affordable, quality, local food that's going to keep dollars within our more rural communities, as well as some of our suburban and urban communities. And it just it lifts a lot of boats,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Jennifer, that's we're at time, and I feel like that's a great segue to the larger Q&A, because that is the question we're here to try to answer. So thank you for that perfect segue. And we have had quite a few questions come in via chat, and feel free to keep dropping them in. Jennifer also touched upon organic a little bit, and so I wanted to return to that theme because that was also a question that Joel had earlier, which is that he hears a lot about the local aspect of eating, but how does the organic part fit into the narrative, and what is the relative importance of organic to your story? And I feel like that is a question for both the producers and the customers. If anybody feels like you want to jump in and answer.
Adrienne, you're muted.
Sorry. I actually just really wanted to, if it's okay, quickly interject about that as a certified organic farmer, and just to talk about what my experience is as an organic farmer and local and our customer base. I do think, like Jennifer, you're talking about like the connection to the farm. What I see from our customers in general is like having that connection is definitely seems like a very important part to why our customer base. And as far as organic on our farm, we really value being certified. We grow about between 4 and 5 acres every year. I would still say quite a small organic vegetable farm compared to the general world out there. But and we do see the value in certification. There's actually a really great cost share program in Maine. So it doesn't actually, in Maine and a few other states, we are lucky to have a program through the USDA that actually helps pay for 75% of our certification fees. And then as far as what is other aspects of being certified that can be arduous, but also really beneficial it just really requires like really good record keeping. And I think that those things help us be better farmers. So those are some good, I would say, really positive aspects of choosing to be certified as a small farm. Yeah.
I'm quickly scanning the screen to see if anybody else is trying to weigh in. Don't be shy if I'm missing you. Okay, thank you for that, Adrienne. Next up, I think all of the producers touched upon labor or human power at the farm, one way or the other, changing over the past year. And we have a question about how that has continued to shift. Did you have more people over the winter? What does the coming season look like for all of you? Noah, I think, is trying to talk, but you're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Yeah, I mean, we've continued, our goal has always been to have more consistency with our labor force and trying to have more year-round employees. So, just having more business this past year has allowed us to take one step closer in that realm. So we did have one employee all winter. And each season we've sort of added an additional employee. So this year, we'll probably have 5 employees and 3 apprentices. But clearly the goal for any small farm like we are is to have efficiency in everything that we do, so that we can employ more people and have a greater impact in our community. And it's somewhat unique where we are. There's not a lot of open farmland, but the notion that farms are sort of destined to be in more rural parts of the state, I think, is an issue that is interesting to me to sort of try to address, where having smaller farms, even like 1 to 2 acre operations in much more populated population centers, I think has a lot of value because it brings agriculture much more to the forefront of people living in more urban centers. And it's just inevitably, as people see more food being produced around them, their consciousness about where their food comes from grows. So I think that issue of people becoming more aware of where their food's coming from because of the pandemic, and that's an opportunity also for us for MOFGA and Maine Farmland Trust and other organizations to really look more critically about where are farms being promoted, and to some degree why has like more urban suburban areas of the state been sort of left behind in terms of real opportunity.
I just wanted to say, related to labor, one thing I've been really grateful to see is the continued support of our customers through the winter time, because we did go from like 3 employees, including that was like owners and a couple extra helpers basically as of like last winter, to full-time. Like now we have about 10 total people that are working for Daybreak, and really need to be able to offer full-time, like year-round jobs to keep them through the year. And even though we tend to have a more seasonal, like the farming season in Maine is more, the summertime, and that's when traditionally our customers are really we have the largest amount of customers. It's been really great to see. One thing we were definitely nervous about going in the winter, but I have been really happy to see is that we've had a lot of continued support through the year. And that is like super important for us for just planning and strategizing, like how to keep everything working smoothly and efficiently. Because having to lose employees and rehire and the efficiency loss there is really hard. So it's been great to see the continued support to be able to have maintain that labor force. Yeah.
Thank you both for that. We have just a few more minutes, so don't be shy if you have any last minute questions. The group is small enough, you could probably even just raise your hand or unmute yourself and chime in if you'd like to. But I thought it might be nice to return to each of the panelists that are still on the call one last time to just have you reflect on what, small or big shift in the coming year could most impact your local food relationship in a mutually beneficial way. So maybe we can start with Adrienne because you show up first on my screen.
I might have needed a second more to think about that.
Okay.
Yeah. If anyone else has any.
Yeah. If anybody else wants to dive right in, please feel free.
Well, I'll jump in just because I feel like Adrienne has done a great job carrying us at times. I should jump in. I don't know that I have like the silver bullet, and I certainly don't want to sound like a wet blanket, but the first thing I told Bonnie when we first started talking about this, this focus group, was that my big question is where were the customers that we saw last March and April? Where were they for the last 10 years? Of course, I didn't say that to them. I just welcomed them into the store and did all the things that I needed to do to, share with them so that they understood what they were participating in. And I think that the big challenge for us now is to just keep reinforcing the message. Hopefully over the past year, we've given them a product that speaks for itself. And I think in large part, that's what does the most good, is that the product just tastes good. It's got the nutrients, people understand, they have that feeling that you get when you buy local and you support a local farm family. So all those things have happened, but we can't let them go. We have to figure out systems, whether that's through, obviously we've learned a lot through COVID that people like to shop from their computer. And the more we can develop, we're still just whenever I participate in these conversations, I'm reminded just how much work, especially I have so much respect for the vegetable farmer. Not to say that the meat world is easy, but the vegetable farmers are working so hard and they're getting dirty, and you don't really think about how much hand-to-hand work goes into that. And that it's a business, and most businesses these days really rely on this tool that we're looking at right now. And the idea of dirty fingers, typing all over a computer, it just doesn't add up. But I think it's what we need to do. We need to find ways to build technology into the marketing and distribution of the product. And I think COVID forced a lot of small farm businesses to develop some of those communication tools and marketing and online presence. I hate to admit it myself because I'm a bit of a Luddite and I don't really like the technology, but I just really think that's going to be the way we solidify that extra piece. I remember, Bonnie, you might be able to correct me on this, but there was a study that was out maybe 4 or 5 years ago that looked at the future of local foods, and I know John Piatti used to talk about this number a lot, that about 8 or 9% of the population of Maine was really locked into supporting local farms and getting local food, and we need to grow that. And I think COVID gave us an opportunity to take advantage of some new people participating in local food. What can we do now to not let them go? And we could probably use some help. I know that all the farmers that I work with and the farmers who are representing here are doing everything they can to not let go of those customers. But if there's anything that MOFGA can do or Maine Farmland Trust can do, Slow Money, I mean, you guys all do so much, but continuing to just pound that message hey guys, we just got a glimpse of what this could look like. A lot of farms did really well this past year. Let's not wait for a pandemic. Let's not wait for some other horrible thing to happen to support these local businesses. Let's just do it. I don't know how to do that.
I think the pandemic changed the way people shop, changed the way I shop, where I shop, what I buy. A lot like Jennifer was saying, it's if you don't go to the grocery store, if you don't see Lucky Charms, you don't need Lucky Charms. I mean, or whatever. You just don't need it. one of the great things about the CSA bag that I just picked up is it's kind of like a surprise, you know, I look inside and go like, okay, now, you know, it's an adventure. I mean, what do I do with baby artichokes? I have no idea, but I'm going to find out. And with regard to cost, I think, yes, buying organic produce from a local farmer maybe appears to cost more, but you know, you can go to Costco and buy the big bundle of lettuce, right? And then you're going to end up throwing away 2.5 heads of the 3 heads because you bought it because it was cheap. So it costs the same. When I buy at Frinklepod or any other farm stand, I buy what I need and I buy what I'm going to use and I use it. So I don't throw it away. So and that's usually my argument that I tell any of my family members who say, why do you buy that? It's so expensive. It's really not. My weekly grocery bill is no different. But the amount of stuff going into my compost pile is, you know, is way down because we buy what we eat. And I think it makes you think more. You think more about what you're going to use and how you're going to use it. And you want to use it because you know how hard it was to make. And I think you've all done a great job of, you know, getting the word out and just demonstrating to the general public that it's much better to shop locally. And I don't think you're going to lose your customers. I mean, I'm not a great businesswoman, but I don't think you're going to lose customers. You're not going to lose the old ladies like me. You know, it's a lot, you know, so I mean, I guess, you know, we'll be dead in 20 years, but you know, for the next 20 years, I think you got your old ladies.
Well, keep eating well.
I think strategizing the new customers is going to require that we've gotten kind of a relationship. What you're talking, Ben, too, is about changing our messaging a little bit. It's been something we've been thinking a lot about, or not our messaging, but we used to really tailor all of our discussions and talking about what we offer based around this concept of like a CSA box, which now we are a CSA box. Like we have a share, but we're not like a traditional CSA model. And I feel like our customer base has moved from the type of customer that might have, you know, 5 or 6 years ago gotten their CSA box that they don't know what's in it and they get every week and they're excited about having it. And now it's brought into a much wider group of folks that are buying from different locations, usually like going to the farmer's market, but we're still talking about it as shares. And like, we just realizing like that these words that we're using to describe what we offer might not really work anymore. Like we need to think about like how we're describing what we offer in a more approachable manner to like a broader sect of the population. And I think that that's something that we're thinking a lot about with like how to maintain this wider net that we're trying to have as far as our customer base. Because if you don't know what a CSA is, and we're saying, oh, you can buy shares, it's kind of almost like it's not really clear to people, and it also makes people not really comfortable if they don't know what the hell we're talking about. You know, I think it's important for us to think about how we're describing what we have to offer as a beyond the traditional acronyms, beyond the traditional ways in which we're communicating about local and organic food. Like I think we do have like a turning point, I think, a little bit on like how to get to maintain this broader group of customers. I think something we've been thinking about.
Okay, folks, it's obvious that this is a juicy conversation full of rich flavors and many textures, as only food conversations can be. And I also want to honor the time that we've given to everyone participating in this conversation. So I just encourage all of you to ponder the perspectives that you've heard and explore ways to keep these local connections going as we go forward, because it's going to involve and impact the health of all of us as individuals and as communities and as a local food economy. And we need all of those things. And we will need them even more as we continue on in a culture that's going to be throwing a lot of different things at us. And uncertainty is what we will continue to embrace. So thank you all for bringing your perspectives to this and your honesty and your excitement and know that we will be following up. Katie and Carrie have plans to do a follow-up email with you to give you some action steps. We'd love to keep this dialogue going in ways that we can. And we encourage ongoing collaborations that are important for our work. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bonnie.
Thanks, Bonnie. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Bonnie.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.